evening, viewers. First of all, a very warm welcome to today's session of Facebook Live. Now, the topic for today's session is a very interesting one where we'll be talking about diabetes and thyroid disorders complicating pregnancy. I'm Dr. Vinita Gupta. I'm a senior consultant obstetrics and gynecology associated with Cloud9 Hospital, Noida branch. Now, these two topics, that is diabetes and thyroid disorders, are huge topics and are actually subjects in themselves. So I hope I'm able to do justice in such a short time, and I like to cover the main points at least during this talk. Now, diabetes and thyroid disorders are basically hormonal or endocrine disorders which, when associated with pregnancy, have a bearing on the maternal health. That is, the mother's health is affected. The baby which is growing in the mother's womb is affected to a varied degree depending upon the severity of the condition and at the time at which the disease was detected during pregnancy. Post-delivery also, the mother goes through a lot of complications and problems specific to the condition. The baby which was growing in the mother's womb in an environment of hormonal imbalance or this endocrine disorder, when such a baby comes out of the mother's womb, it undergoes a lot of metabolic disorders and imbalances. So this baby requires a lot of close monitoring in the post-delivery phase also. So the NICU stay of such a baby is prolonged. In certain situations, these babies require long-term follow-up also. So the condition has a wide range of problems which affect the mother as well as the baby. Now coming to the first topic, that is diabetes during pregnancy. Now, diabetes is a lifestyle metabolic disorder in which there is glucose intolerance, abnormal glucose metabolism of varying degree, and it causes hyperglycemia or increased blood sugar levels in the mother's blood. Since we are talking about diabetes in pregnancy, the incidence of diabetes in pregnancy worldwide is about 6 to 8%. The Asian population or the Asian race is much more prone to develop diabetes, and India being the diabetic capital of the world, the incidence of diabetes with pregnancy is as high as 20 to 25%, especially in the cities or urban areas. So out of every 5 pregnant women, 1 will be having gestational diabetes. Now, the diabetes during pregnancy, it can be of 2 types. It could be a pre-existing diabetic condition, that is, the woman may be aware of her diabetic status or high blood sugar levels in the pre-conceptional phase only, or the diabetes may be, or high blood sugar levels may be detected at the first visit, that is, in the first trimester the high blood sugar levels are detected. So in patients in which the blood sugar levels are high in the first trimester itself, most likely they are kind of diabetic in the pre-pregnancy phase only, and the diabetes was not detected or went undiagnosed in the pre-pregnancy phase. Now, the second type of diabetes is gestational diabetes, which develops in the late second trimester or in the 3rd trimester. Now, the reason for this is slightly different. Beyond 20 weeks of pregnancy, certain placental hormones are formed which are actually acting against insulin, or they kind of cause insulin resistance in the body, leading to hyperglycemia. Now, this hyperglycemia occurs in all the women, and this is for a reason. These high blood sugar levels are required for the growth of the baby, but in women who are prone to develop diabetes, these levels go beyond a certain range and cause abnormal metabolism of glucose in the body of the mother, leading to a lot of complication in the late second trimester and the 3rd trimester onwards. So how does the diabetic status of the mother or hyperglycemia affect the mother and the baby? Now, it depends upon the stage at which the hyperglycemia had started to occur. If the patient was diabetic in the pre-pregnancy phase and the blood sugars were uncontrolled, it can lead to maternal as well as fetal complications. The maternal complications or problems can be she may be having recurrent urinary tract infections, vaginal infections, fungal infections. She may be more prone to develop pregnancy-induced hypertension. Other than that, other than these problems, there could be certain problems which are specific to diabetes. That is diabetic retinopathy. Diabetes is one of the leading causes of blindness in the reproductive age group in the women. So we have to look for diabetic retinopathy. So a fundus examination is usually advised during pregnancy in every trimester in patients who are diabetic from the pre-pregnancy or long-standing diabetes is there. Then diabetes can lead to renal involvement also. So kidney functions have to be kept under close monitoring during the pregnancy of these women. Now in gestational diabetes, what happens is and another thing is that the hyperglycemia, if it is there right from the beginning, it affects the baby and it causes structural malformations in the baby. So the organogenesis or the organ formation of the baby starts in the early stages of pregnancy and is usually complete by about 8 to 10 weeks of pregnancy. So if the blood sugar levels are on the higher side during this phase, it can lead to structural malformations in the baby. These malformations are there could be neural tube defects, anencephaly, there could be spinal defects like meningomyelocele, renal malformations could be there in the baby. Then congenital cardiac malformations are also very common in patients with diabetes. So we have to be on the lookout for these malformations whenever we encounter a patient with pre-existing diabetes. So level 1 scan, that is a nuchal scan, is advised at the end of the first trimester to look for neural tube defects and anencephaly. In the second trimester, we get an anomaly scan, which is usually done at around 18 to 20 weeks, and a detailed malformation scan is done in these patients. A fetal echo is also advised in these patients. A fetal echo is also advised in these patients at around 24 weeks of pregnancy. So a close monitoring of the baby and the mother has to be done right from the beginning. Now when we talk about pure gestational diabetes, that is hyperglycemia which develops beyond the stage of 24 weeks of pregnancy, in these cases the organogenesis is already complete by this stage, by the time hyperglycemia is detected. So what happens at this stage is because of hyperglycemia, the baby is usually put on a lot of weight. So the babies are big or macrosomic babies. The woman may have polyhydramnios, that is excessive amount of amniotic fluid in the uterine cavity. These factors, that is big baby and polyhydramnios, plus presence of recurrent urinary tract infections, presence of recurrent vaginal infections, all these factors make the patient more prone to go into preterm labor. So the chances of preterm labor are high in these patients. Because of the macrosomia and other factors, the patient is more likely to end up in a cesarean section, and as and when we try for a normal delivery, the chances of birth trauma is high in these patients. So a difficult delivery, birth trauma, prolonged nursery stay of the baby, respiratory distress syndrome can occur. So the baby may require a close monitoring in the post-delivery phase. Hypoglycemia can occur in the baby, so blood sugars of the baby have to be monitored at regular intervals for the first few days of post-delivery. As we can see, diabetes causes a lot of problems, and the extent of complications can be very variable depending from depending upon the stage at which the hyperglycemia or the stage at which the diabetes starts to develop. So the key to management for diabetes during pregnancy is early detection or screening the women for diabetes mellitus. Now, whenever we are talking about screening, first, whenever the patient comes to us on an OPD basis, if she's pregnant, we screen the patients for high risk factors. These high risk factors, make us more aware and we become more vigilant towards these patients and look for diabetes mellitus at every point of contact. So these high risk factors are number one, if there is a family history of diabetes in the immediate family. Number two, if there was a history of gestational diabetes in the previous pregnancy. So if the patient had had a previous delivery where she had gestational diabetes, then there is a likelihood of 70% that in the present pregnancy also she'll develop gestational diabetes. If there is a previous history of a macroscopic baby, that is birth weight more than 4.1 kg, previous history of a stillborn baby in the third trimester, then patients who are obese, that is their BMI is more than 30, these patients are also more likely to develop gestational diabetes. So these patients have to be under vigilance for gestational diabetes. Now, if the patient has come to us in the pre-pregnancy phase, we usually get her blood sugar fasting and PP levels. If the blood sugar fasting is more than 126 and the postprandial levels are more than 200 and the HbA1c or the glycosylated hemoglobin is more than 6.5, then the patient is a frank diabetic. Now, if Anne has to be put on treatment before she plans for her pregnancy, the blood sugar levels have to be controlled and she needs to be put on prenatal vitamins. Now, if the blood sugar levels in the pre-pregnancy phase are between 100 and 126, then that is a pre-diabetic state. So these patients are put on a diabetic diet, lifestyle management. So diabetic diet, exercise, lifestyle management. And when they get pregnant, we do a oral glucose tolerance test in these patients. So the glucose tolerance test during pregnancy in the first trimester is done, like we give them 75 grams of anhydrous glucose, and blood sugars are done 2 hours later. If the blood sugar values are more than 140, then the patient is labeled as diabetic. And these patients have to be scrutinized. Both the mother and the baby have to be put under strict vigilance. The mother has to undergo a regular, other than the routine antenatal testing, she needs to get her renal profile done on every 6 to 8 weeks basis. A fundus examination has to be done in every trimester. The baby has to be screened for malformation. So in the first trimester, we get a nupal scan. The second trimester, we get an anomaly scan, a detailed anomaly scan. At 24 weeks, we do a fetal echo to rule out malformations. And from 28 weeks onwards, we have to be on a lookout for macrosomia, that is a big baby. So serial scanning is required, and look for polyhydramnios or development of excessive amniotic fluid in the uterine cavity. And depending upon her blood sugar levels and the ultrasound profile of the baby, timely intervention is required. Now, so as we can see, the whole process of management of diabetes during pregnancy depends on the main facts, like we need to early diagnose diabetes at an early stage, manage diabetes, try to achieve normal or near normal blood sugar levels, be on a lookout for complications in the mother and the baby, and timely intervention is required. So this whole process requires a teamwork. So a close teamwork between the obstetrician, the endocrinologist, the dietitian, diabetic educator, and lastly but not the least, the neonatologist, who is going to take care of the baby later on. So a close coordination between all these people plus the care of the patient has to be our main pillars of management. Now for the management, a proper diabetic diet, the three main pillars of treatment for diabetes are a good diet, a diabetic diet, that is, depending upon the BMI of the patient is put on a diabetic diet. Now the basic principles of the diabetic diet is to avoid single large meals, number two, to avoid refined carbohydrates, take a good high protein diet, take whole grain carbohydrates. So these are the, and lots of vegetables. So a fiber diet, protein content, and whole grains are preferable during pregnancy. A regular active lifestyle during pregnancy, that is mild to moderate exercises. If there are no other high risk factors for not advising exercises, then we can we usually advise mild to moderate exercises during pregnancy. Blood sugar monitoring is done through glucometer. The patient is educated to how to use she's advised to keep she's taught how to use the glucometer. The blood sugar levels are done at regular intervals. So if not on a daily basis, at least on an alternate day basis, blood sugars have to be monitored. The fasting, the goals of the treatment are to keep the blood sugar levels, fasting blood sugar levels should be less than 95, and the PP level or the postprandial levels should be less than 120. So with this kind of management and close follow-up of the mother and the baby, we are usually able to have a normal healthy outcome during the pregnancy. Now going on to thyroid disorders in pregnancy. Now thyroid disorders, there are two types of thyroid disorders, and thyroid disorders are also the second most common endocrine disorders during pregnancy. The two types of thyroid disorders are hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. In hypothyroidism, first we will be talking about hypothyroidism, which is more common. So the incidence of hypothyroidism is around 5%. In hypothyroidism, the TSH levels are high. The T3 and T4 levels, which is the active form of thyroid hormone, the levels of T3 and T4, they may be normal, which is seen in subclinical hypothyroidism, or they can be on the lower side, which is frank hypothyroidism. Then if the TSH levels is high, that is, if it is more than 2.5, we usually advise anti-TPO antibodies or anti-thyroid antibodies is advised. And then depending upon if they are positive or negative, if the levels are negative, then we see what the status of TSH is. If it is more than 3.5, we put the patient on medication. If it is less than 3.5 and anti-TPO or anti-thyroid antibodies are absent, then in that case the patient can be kept under close monitoring and follow-up. If the levels are rising, then she may be put on levothyroxine medicine or a treatment for hypothyroidism. So the goals of management in hypothyroidism is to keep the TSH levels less than 2.5 in the first trimester, and in the second and third trimester the levels are to be kept under 3. Now, what are the problems that can occur with hypothyroidism? Hypothyroidism is a very subtle condition in which the problems cannot be very serious, but it can lead to other problems like it can lead to gestational diabetes. It can lead to pregnancy-induced hypertension. It can cause abruptio or sudden separation of the placenta, and antepartum hemorrhage can occur. The chances of preterm delivery are also higher in patients with uncontrolled hypothyroidism. Anemia can occur, and then other than these problems, because of the problems associated with hypothyroidism like excessive weight gain, pain in the legs, swelling in the legs, all these problems, lethargy, the overall quality of life during pregnancy is also kind of deteriorated. So a good management of hypothyroidism can avoid all these problems. Management by giving medication, a lifestyle management and regular exercises with this management we can avoid the complications associated with hypothyroidism. Now the next condition in thyroid disorder is hyperthyroidism, in which the TSH levels are low. They are less than 0.1, and the T3, T4 levels are on the higher side. Now there are different types of hyperthyroidism. One is Graves' disease, second is toxic nodular goiter. These are the conditions which require treatment during pregnancy. Then there are certain kinds of hyperthyroidism which are specific to pregnancy, that is like transient gestational hyperthyroidism. In such cases, we usually do not require any antithyroid medication and only symptomatic treatment is required. Like these patients can present with hyperemesis or excessive vomiting during pregnancy. So symptomatic treatment for excessive vomiting, and so medication for vomiting. If the patient is having a lot of muscle cramps, then treatment for that. If the patient is having diarrhea, repeated episodes of diarrhea, then treatment for that is given. But usually in transient gestational hyperthyroidism, antithyroid medication is not recommended. But then again, this discretion is will be, you know, the decision for this will be taken by the endocrinologist. So whenever we find that the TSH levels are less than 0.1 and the T3, T4 levels are high, we usually refer the patient to an endocrinologist, and then based on the patient's symptoms and other factors, previous history, the decision for putting the patient on antithyroid medication is taken. If the patient was already on antithyroid medication before pregnancy, then during pregnancy we need to change the medication, because certain antithyroid medications can cause malformations in the baby. So the medicines have to be changed in the first trimester. Normally neomycazole or methimazole is given in the pre-pregnancy phase. As soon as the patient conceives or before she starts planning the pregnancy, the patient is put on propylthiouracil. And then in the first trimester, the thyroid levels are maintained on PTU, and then if required, the medication can be changed from the second trimester onwards once the organogenesis is complete. So hyperthyroidism causes its own set of complications during pregnancy. It can lead to preterm delivery. It can lead to a lot of muscle cramps, diarrhea, failure to gain weight during pregnancy. Pregnancy-induced hypertension can occur in these patients. They can go into preterm labor. The baby can also, if the thyroid levels are not controlled, the baby can have low IQ. So these babies may require long-term follow-up later on. Post-delivery, the babies can develop toxicity. So again, these babies require immediate follow-up in the post-delivery phase, and then long-term follow-up also. So this is as far as both the endocrine disorders are concerned. I've very quickly gone through the main points. As I've already told, these are subjects in themselves and require a lot of there are a lot of intricacies in these the disorders, and since we had a very short time, so I try to cover the main points in this session. Now, if we go on to the questions. Now, the first question is from Sagarika. Yeah, the first question of Sagarika. Which hormones are responsible for thyroid disorders in pregnancy? So thyroid is an endocrine gland which is kind of present in the neck region. This gland is responsible for release of the active form of hormone, that is T3 and T4. These are the two active hormones. These are the hormones which finally act on the target hormones. But then thyroid disorders are also dependent on a lot of other hormones which are produced from our brain, that is the pituitary gland, which produces thyroid stimulating hormone. So TSH, or the thyroid stimulating hormone, is produced from the pituitary gland which is present in the brain. So this hormone controls the release of T3 and T4 during pregnancy. Now there are certain other pituitary tumors, like hyperprolactin hormone can also affect the production of TSH, and so pituitary tumors, prolactinomas, excessive production of TSH hormone can affect the the overall functioning of the thyroid gland. So these are the hormones. Now, the next question is from Shikha. How can I control my thyroid naturally during pregnancy? Now, Shikha, you cannot control the thyroid hormones naturally during pregnancy. It is thyroid is a gland which produces hormones, and these hormones are responsible for controlling the metabolism of our body. During pregnancy, we need to keep our thyroid hormones, that is T3, T4 and TSH, during pregnancy under check, because the neuronal development or the brain development of the baby is dependent on the efficient functioning of these hormones. So we need to keep these hormones under check. You can't control these hormones naturally. There is only so much that you can do. There are certain conditions like iodine induced hypothyroidism, which can be taken care of by taking adequate or optimum quantities of thyroid. Iodine can help in optimum formation of T3 and T4. So iodine is taken up by the thyroid gland, and then it is utilized in forming the active form of hormone, that is T3 and T4. So if there is iodine deficiency, then the formation of T3 and T4 is hindered, and this can lead to hypothyroidism. So iodine induced hypothyroidism can be taken care of by taking optimum quantities of iodine, which can be in the form of fortified salt, or by taking a diet rich in iodine. But other than that, pregnancy and thyroid, if it is required, then you have to take medication. You cannot control it naturally. Now, the next question is from Tamara. Thank you. Can I have a healthy pregnancy with hypothyroidism? Yes, why not, Tamara? You can have a very healthy pregnancy with hypothyroidism. The whole purpose of this talk is to make you aware that these conditions are there. The management or the treatment of these conditions depends upon early detection. Once the condition has been detected, optimum and adequate treatment can prevent most of the complications that can occur during the process of pregnancy and the post-delivery phase. So proper treatment, lifestyle management, close monitoring during pregnancy of the hormones, as well as maternal and fetal surveillance during pregnancy can prevent most of the complications, and you can have a near healthy pregnancy. Now the next question is from Kaur, which is a good thyroid level for pregnancy. So when we are talking about thyroid levels, we usually get while doing a screening for thyroid disorders, we get a TSH level and free T4 levels. The TSH levels have to be, a good TSH level is keeping it under 2.5 in the first trimester and keeping it below 3 in the second and third trimester for hypothyroidism. When we are talking about hyperthyroidism, the levels are usually, the TSH is usually on the lower side, but T3 and T4 have to be maintained on the upper third of the normal range of T3 and T4. So that's how these are the parameters that we follow when we are managing thyroid disorders during pregnancy. Now the next question is from Namrata. Is TSH 4.2 normal in pregnancy? So 4.2 TSH is normal for a non-pregnant stage, but for pregnancy we want the levels to be at least less than 3 in the second and third trimester and less than 2.5 in the first trimester. So whenever we encounter such a value during pregnancy, we usually get antithyroid antibodies also done in these patients, and if these antithyroid antibodies are high on the higher side, we put the patient on medication for hypothyroidism, that is, we put the patient on levothyroxine medication, and then the thyroid levels are followed up every 4 to 6 weekly intervals. Now the next question is from Shail. What should a pregnant woman eat for thyroid? So there is nothing specific for thyroid. You need to take a good high protein diet. So the problems with thyroid disorder during pregnancy is development of anemia. The patient may be having a lot of muscle cramps, diarrhea, failure to gain weight. So the diet should be rich in protein. A well balanced diet has to be taken by the patient, and the hydration of the patient has to be maintained, and anemia has to be taken care of. So a diet rich in vitamin B12 and iron rich diet. Vitamin C has to be taken in optimum quantity. So citrus fruits, lots of green leafy vegetables, intake of fruits, and in addition to a good well balanced diet, the patient, since these patients also have gastric problems, like they may be having diarrhea, they may be having a lot of gastritis. So timing of the meals, so small and frequent meals, a good well balanced diet, maintaining your hydration is the key to a healthy pregnancy during pregnancies complicated with thyroid disorders. So these are the things, but there's nothing specific for thyroid that you can take to reduce the or control the condition. So now this is it. Now the next question is from Chehel. How does diabetes affect the baby during pregnancy? Now we have already talked about it, but I'll just go through the various problems that the baby undergoes when diabetes is detected. So it depends upon the severity of diabetes, that is the degree of hyperglycemia and the level of HbA1c or the glycosylated hemoglobin. So if the diabetes was there right from the beginning, or it was a pre-existing diabetic condition, and the patient conceives with diabetes, then the chances of structural malformations are there. So we need to aggressively treat diabetes and control the blood sugar levels, and then keep a close follow-up of the baby to look for structural malformations in the baby. So when we talk about how does diabetes affect the baby in the first trimester, since the organs are developing in the first trimester, it can lead to an uncontrolled and unsupervised pregnancy with diabetes, can lead to structural malformations in the baby. These malformations, which are commonly seen during pregnancy with diabetes, are anencephaly, or failure to develop the vault of the brain is not developed in these babies, and then neural tube defects like spina bifida, meningomyelocele. These are the neural tube defects which are commonly seen in patients with diabetes. Then renal malformations are commonly seen in patients pregnancy and diabetes, and then cardiac malformations are also there. In addition to the structural malformations in the baby, there could be growth problems in the baby. So in 90% of the cases with the diabetes, the babies are macrosomic or big babies. But in 10% of the cases, there can be growth restriction also. So extremes of growth problems can be there. Majority of the babies have macrosomia, or they are big babies. In 10% cases, growth restriction can be there. Because of the growth problems, these babies are more likely to have birth trauma or birth injuries like Erb's palsy, radial nerve palsy. These palsies are very common in vaginal deliveries with big babies with diabetic mothers. So nursery stay of the baby in the post delivery phase, because of birth trauma, because of episodes of hypoglycemia, hypocalcemia, and magnesium levels are also low in these babies. These babies may also develop respiratory distress syndrome because the lungs are kind of underdeveloped in these babies. So nursery stay is prolonged for these babies due to these reasons, and in some cases these babies may require a long-term follow-up also. So right from structural malformations to growth problems to post-delivery nursery stay, these are the problems that the baby faces when the mother is diabetic. Now the next question is from Nandita. Can a diabetic mom have a healthy baby? Yes, why not, Nandita? And again, as I just told, in thyroid disorders and diabetic disorders, these are endocrine disorders. And if we are able to control the metabolic condition and the hormonal environment around the mother and the baby, we can have a near normal pregnancy outcome for both the mother and the baby. So again, the idea is to detect diabetes early if it is there. Ideally, the detection has to be done in the preconceptional phase. So anyone, any couple who's planning for a pregnancy, all of them, you must go for a preconceptional counseling, get certain investigations done, of which blood sugars are important. Glycosylated hemoglobin or HbA1c is important. So if your HbA1c is less than 6.5, you can plan for your pregnancy. If it is on the higher side, first control your blood sugar levels, bring your HbA1c on the lower side, and then only plan for your pregnancy. Start with your prenatal vitamins. As soon as you get pregnant, if the blood sugar levels were normal earlier on, and if you have any one of the high risk factors which we discussed earlier on, that is a family history, previous history of GDM, previous history of a big baby, previous history of a stillborn baby in the previous pregnancy, or if your BMI is on the higher side, then you are at a higher risk of developing gestational diabetes. Then you need to get an oral glucose tolerance test in the first trimester itself, that is 2 hours after 75 grams of anhydrous glucose. And if the blood sugar levels are more than 140, we put the patient on a diabetic diet and exercise and a lifestyle management program. So controlling the blood sugar levels, keeping the mother and the baby in close surveillance by getting investigations for separately for the mother and for the baby. Be on a lookout for complications during pregnancy with diabetes, like structural malformations, like growth disorders in the baby, growth problems in the baby like macrosomia or growth restriction. Be on a lookout for polyhydramnios. If we are taking care of all these things, then usually most of the diabetic mothers have a healthy baby. Usually there are no problems. But again, a close monitoring is required and timely intervention is required. And again, as I've already told you, it requires a teamwork. It requires a close coordination between your obstetrician, so the patient, the obstetrician, the endocrinologist, the dietitian, and the neonatologist. All of them have to be working in tandem. Now the next question is from Prachi. What is done to control gestational diabetes medically and naturally? So it depends upon the degree of gestational diabetes. If the blood sugar levels are on a higher side, so if suppose you get your oral glucose tolerance test and your 2-hour sample is more than 200, then most likely you will be requiring medication. If the levels are between 140, the 2-hour sample level is between 140 and 199, then we usually put the patient on a strict diabetic diet, exercise and blood sugar monitoring program. So blood sugar levels are monitored on a fasting basis and 1 hour post prandial, and all 3 samples. So every day or at least on an alternate day basis, the blood sugar fasting levels and postprandial levels are done. 4 samples are taken on at least on an alternate day basis, and the goals are to keep the fasting sugar level less than 95 and the PP level should be less than 120. So by taking a good diabetic diet, small and frequent meals, avoid large single meals, try to take a lot of whole grains, refined carbohydrates have to be avoided, and regular exercise. So about 15 to 20 minutes brisk walk after every meal is advised to these patients. So that is how you can, you know, control your gestational diabetes. And if even with taking a good diabetic diet and following a proper exercise schedule, if still the blood sugar levels are on a higher side, then your endocrinologist may advise you to go on an insulin therapy. And most of the times we come across patients and they are, you know, scared to go on an insulin therapy. Please don't be scared on going on a insulin therapy. Insulin controls your blood sugar levels beautifully, and it is ultimately very good for you and your baby for the final outcome. So if it is required and if it is advised by your endocrinologist to go on an insulin therapy, we are looking at. So the next question is from Nitin Chandra. 23 weeks, HbA1c is 4.6, TSH is 2.86, blood sugar is 102. In this, is this levels fine? So HbA1c is less than 4.6, so this is actually good. TSH is 2.86 is also good. We do not put you on medication for a TSH of 2.86. Blood sugar is 102. You have not mentioned whether it is a fasting blood sugar levels or a random sample. So if it is a fasting blood sugar level is 102, then this is on a higher side. We if in such a situation, we usually advise a oral glucose tolerance test, and so because this becomes a pre-diabetic state. So after 8 hours of fasting, you need to get your blood sugar fasting levels, then take 75 grams of anhydrous glucose, then 1 hour later and 2 hours later samples have to be done. If these are normal, then maybe you don't need to do anything. But even if one value is deranged, then we put it in the category of impaired glucose tolerance or pre-diabetic state, and a diabetic diet is advised. If 2 or more than 2 samples are deranged, then we diagnose it as gestational diabetes. So again, as we were talking, 102, if it is a random sample, it's okay. If it's a fasting sugar, it is on the higher side, and we need to, you know, manage accordingly and get certain investigations done. Now the next question is from Simran. I'm on obese side and have hypothyroidism. Got all mentioned above tests done. Everything is normal. I'm in the 9th week, but I do strength exercises and do consume whey protein as I'm vegetarian and not liking paneer, and all for protein, paneer and all for protein. I'm a regular workout person and do consume consume whey from pre-pregnancy phase, so it's fine to continue do so. So Simran, normally in the first, you are 9 weeks pregnant with hypothyroidism. So in the first trimester, we usually do not advise synthetic proteins during pregnancy. We just advise you to take a good high protein diet during pregnancy. So if you are not able to take paneer, there are other sources for protein. You can increase on your milk intake and milk products in other forms. You can have a good high protein diet by taking lentils and legumes. You can take increase your soy protein also. Although hypothyroidism, you can't take a lot of soy protein, but then that is also one of the sources of proteins. And if you are a non-vegetarian, then you can take eggs and white meat, that is fish and chicken you can have. So there are other sources. So normally I do not advise putting the patients on synthetic proteins in the first trimester itself. So natural proteins, a diet rich in vegetables and fruits is good enough for you, since you have mentioned that you are on the obese side. So whole grains and a high fiber diet and a good high protein diet should do the trick, and maybe this is not required. And as far as workout is concerned, you can continue with mild exercises in the first trimester if you have been doing them earlier on. But strength exercises and weights are not advised in the first trimester. From the second trimester onwards, the exercises can be, stepped up to moderate intensity. But in the first trimester, we usually advised mild exercises. Now, the next question is from Mehak. What are the signs of being diabetic during pregnancy? Now, as we have mentioned, diabetes during pregnancy can be a pre-pregnancy diabetes or gestational diabetes. The pre-pregnancy diabetes usually show signs of polyuria, polydipsia, the classical signs of diabetes, that is excessive thirst, excessive hunger, and excessive sweating and all, and weight gain during pregnancy. So but in gestational diabetes, usually there are no signs and symptoms. It is usually detected by going in for a screening test only. So the signs are usually not there, but then there are certain things that make us pick up on our antenatal. That is if there is excessive weight gain during pregnancy. So in every trimester, we usually expect a weight gain of about 1.5 to 2 kgs per month. So if we feel that the weight gain is more than what we expect in the pregnancy, then we have to get the blood sugar levels done. Then if the baby is showing signs, certain signs, like if the growth of the baby is on the higher side, or if the fluid levels are on the higher side, then also these are things which give us an indication that there could be a gestational diabetes, which was the previous levels were normal. Then we usually advise a repeat oral glucose tolerance test in these patients. So as you had asked, Mehed, what are the signs of diabetes? Usually 90% of the cases there are no signs and symptoms, and diabetes is usually detected only while getting a screening test done during pregnancy. It is only in the pre-existing diabetic patients that we have signs and symptoms like recurrent urinary tract infections, recurrent vaginal infections, or fungal infections, and weight gain, and excessive thirst. These are there in pre-existing diabetes only. And pre-existing diabetes is responsible for just about 6 to 8% of all the diabetic patients. 90% of the diabetes is gestational diabetes only. Now the next question is from Nanda. Only insulin is an option, or oral metformin is okay in GDM? The decision for putting the patient on metformin is safe in pregnancy first and foremost. Nowadays the studies have shown that metformin is safe in pregnancy and can be given in pregnancy. So especially in patients with PCOS or overweight patients, where we feel that these patients they are in the pre-diabetic phase, we put them on metformin, and it is continued in the first trimester of pregnancy also. So it is safe in pregnancy, but there are certain specific indications for insulin therapy. If the patient is not controlled on a diet and exercise regimen, and blood sugar levels are still on the higher side, then insulin is the treatment for diabetes mellitus during pregnancy. So insulin has its own specific indications. We can't compare insulin and metformin, but yes, metformin is safe in pregnancy and can be given in patients with GDM. Now the next question is from Suhana. What birth defects are caused by diabetes? Thank you, Suhana, for the question. We have already discussed about the birth defects that are caused by diabetes. These are structural malformations. It could be neural tube defects. It could be renal problems. It could be GI or gastrointestinal system of the baby may be maldeveloped, or it could lead to diaphragmatic hernia in the baby. It could lead to congenital cardiac malformations or heart malformations in the baby. and it can also lead to later on big babies or macrosomia. So these are the birth defects, the structural defects, and then growth problems are there. Now the next question is from Priya. Can a pregnant woman build up gestational diabetes during pregnancy? Is it because of intake of lot of sugar? Uh, 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 we have already talked about it, Priya. The incidence of gestational diabetes in pregnancy is as high as 20 to 25% in India, especially in the cities and urban areas. So it is a very high incidence. Yes, a pregnant woman can develop gestational diabetes, is diabetes of pregnancy. So, and it usually develops in the second trimester or in the third trimester. The reason for this is the release of certain placental hormones like growth hormones and placental, that is HPL, human placental lactogen. So these are the hormones which lead to insulin resistance in the body. So the insulin which is being produced by the pregnant woman is not being utilized by the target organs, and hence the blood sugar levels maintain are they remain on the higher side. This leads to hyperglycemia in the mother. So it can occur because of the placental hormones. And no, it is not because of gestational diabetes, is not because of intake of lot of sugar. But then if you are gestational diabetic, then you need to cut down on the sugar intake totally. So sugar intake does not lead to development of gestational diabetes. But then once GDM is detected, you need to cut down on sugar intake. Now the next question is from Soumya. What causes pregnancy diabetes? So Soumya, we've already talked about it. Pregnancy itself is a diabetic state, because in pregnancy certain hormones are released from the placenta which act against the insulin which is being produced by the mother's pancreas. Now this occurs for a reason, because the body requires excess sugars in order to maintain the growth of the baby. So it has a reason, these hormones have a reason to being produced in the mother's blood. But then in patients who are prone to develop diabetes, you kind of develop an glucose intolerance and abnormal glucose metabolism, and they start showing features of gestational diabetes. So that is the cause. But we really do not know. There are a lot of studies on as to why some patients develop diabetes. These hormones are produced in all the pregnant women, but some patients develop diabetes and some do not. That is probably because of the genetic predisposition towards diabetes. Now the next question is from Bharti. I'm 17 weeks pregnant and put on McDonald's cervical cerclage on 15 weeks, and now I am on complete bed rest. Is bed rest will affect the growth of the baby? No, bed rest will not affect the growth of the baby. Bed rest with McDonald's cervical cerclage is for a reason, because the chances of going into preterm delivery is very high in patients with incompetent cervix. So we have to weigh the pros and cons. What are the benefits of going on a bed rest, and what are the problems associated with going on a complete bed rest? So in your case, a complete bed rest is indicated, but it does not affect the growth of the baby. It can have other problems like DVT and other problems. Now the next question is from Ramya. Does thyroid defect lead to diabetes in any way? Yes, hypothyroidism can make the patient more prone towards diabetes or gestational diabetes. Thyroid is a gland which releases hormone, that is T3 and T4, which are responsible for maintaining the metabolic rate of our body. In hypothyroidism, the metabolism slows down and the patient becomes more prone towards developing gestational diabetes. So there is an association between hypothyroidism and gestational diabetes. Now, the next question is from Rohini. What role do the thyroid hormones play in pregnancy? So, as we have already talked about it, Rohini, thyroid hormone is basically responsible for maintaining the metabolism of our body. So, when a woman gets pregnant, the metabolism of the pregnant woman has to be increased in order to maintain the functions of the pregnant woman, as well as the thyroid hormones, the levels of the thyroid hormones need to be kept under control during pregnancy, so that the metabolism of the pregnant woman is maintained, and she's able to maintain the cardiac out functions have to be on a higher side. The pulse rate increases, the blood pressure there can be variations in the blood pressure, the blood flow towards the kidneys and the placenta, and the baby ultimately has to be increased so that to maintain the pregnancy. So all this is done through the thyroid hormones only. So they play a very important role in pregnancy. Now the next question is from Zainab. Hypo or hyper, which type of thyroid is more dangerous for pregnancy? So Zainab, both conditions are equally damaging to the pregnancy if it is not kept under control. So adequate treatment for both the conditions has to be given to the pregnant woman, so that we can avoid the complications of these disorders during pregnancy. Hypo has its own set of complications, hyperthyroidism has its own set of complications. Hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, especially post delivery, can lead to a thyroid crisis in the pregnant woman. So both have their own set of complications, so we can't say that this is more dangerous than the other. Now Charu, is it safe to breastfeed while I'm taking beta blockers, thyroid hormone and anti-thyroid medicines? Yes, it is safe to breastfeed. You have to, in fact, it is advisable to breastfeed the baby under all circumstances. Beta blockers are safe in the breastfeeding or lactating women. Thyroid hormone is very commonly given to pregnant women and the lactating mothers, so it does not, it will only help you. Anti-thyroid medication, if it is indicated, can be given to the lactating mothers. Now the next question is from Charu. Yeah, we've gone through Charu's question. The next question is from Seema. Are the symptoms of thyroid different during pregnancy? The symptoms are not different. In fact, they may be more exaggerated during pregnancy. So there may be excessive weight gain during pregnancy, anemia. So if your blood sugars levels are on the lower side in the pre-pregnancy phase, they may drop further if you have hypothyroidism. So the symptoms, the signs and symptoms may be exaggerated. Anemia can be more pronounced. The leg cramps can be even more, the symptoms of leg cramps, excessive weight gain, swelling in the legs. All these symptoms are more pronounced during pregnancy. Now the next question is from Vartika. How can hyperthyroidism affect me and the baby? Now that's a good question, Vartika. Hyperthyroidism, that is when the TSH levels are on the lower side and T3, T4 levels are on the higher side. Now in the normal situation also, in the first trimester, there is a hyperthyroid-like state which occurs. So not all kinds of hyperthyroidism require treatment. So hyperthyroidism in the first trimester can lead to excessive vomiting in the mother. There can be failure to gain weight during pregnancy. It can cause diarrhea. It can cause a lot of muscle cramps during pregnancy. It can also lead to development of pregnancy-induced hypertension during pregnancy. It can lead to abruption or placental separation during pregnancy, and in the post and it can also lead to preterm delivery. Now as far as the baby is concerned, it can lead to certain malformations in the baby. It can lead to, if it is not controlled. So hyperthyroidism which is not kept under control can lead to abnormal or defective development of the neuronal system of the baby. It can lead to low IQ in the babies, so these babies require a long-term follow-up. But then again, this is in cases where there is uncontrolled hyperthyroidism which is not kept under check, and it can also lead to preterm delivery, so the complications to the baby because of preterm delivery. And post delivery, it can cause thyroid crisis, that is problems in the postpartum phase can also be there. So but if hypothyroidism is timely detected and treated accordingly, then usually the pregnancy is uneventful and there is a good pregnancy outcome. Okay. And thank you viewers. It's been a great session and the questions were very interesting and very genuine. So in the nutshell, what I would like to, the take home message following this talk should be that we need to be aware and sensitive towards these endocrine disorders which can complicate the pregnancy. So they require an early detection, ideally in the preconceptional phase. Control the endocrine disorder, whether it is diabetes or thyroid, in the pre-pregnancy phase, and during pregnancy the medication according to the pregnancy has to be given. So if the patient was on hyperthyroid medication, then in some situations the medication may have to, we may need to change the medication the first trimester. So medication according to pregnancy has to be given, a lifestyle management, close monitoring of the mother and the baby during the pregnancy. The delivery phase has to be properly monitored, and the post-delivery phase of both the mother and the baby has to be kept under surveillance. Again, it is a teamwork, so just going to your obstetrician is not going to take away all the problems. These endocrine problems require a close network and coordinated work from all your doctors, that is your endocrinologist, your dietitian, the diabetic educator, and the neonatologist. All these have to work in coordination in order to achieve a good pregnancy outcome. Have a safe pregnancy, viewers.